Good morning, everyone. From Prep.3, we will start our lesson on Unit 3, Lesson 1, which is the main principles of heredity. First, we must know what's meant by traits. We have two types of traits, hereditary traits and acquired traits. The hereditary traits, they are the traits that are transmitted from one generation to another. It means they are the traits that transmit from the parents to their offspring, like color of eyes, color of skin, tallness, shortness, maybe some of diseases, and so on. The traits that you take from your parent. Number two, the acquired traits. They are the traits that you acquire from our environment and they never transmit from one generation to another, like walking, reading, flying in birds, migration in birds, and so on. So here we have two types of traits. One can be transmitted through generations and the other acquired from our surrounding environment. First, we must know what's meant by genetics. Genetics, it's our lesson. It's our related science to our lesson. It's the science that study the transmission of traits or hereditary traits special from one generation to another by studying the similarities and differences between the parents and their offspring. It means the science of studying the transmission of hereditary traits, this one, from the parent to their offspring is called genetics. It's a branch of biology which study the transmission of traits and how the traits are similar or different from their parent to their offspring. Mendel experiments in heredity. Mendel, he was the first scientist who studied the heredity. And he makes his experiment on pea plant. Why special the pea plant? Give reason. Number one, because it's easy to plant and grow fast. If I want to make my experiment, I must use a plant which grow very fast to finish my experiment. Number two, it has a short life cycle. Its life cycle from planting till making a flower and pollinate and so on, it's very short time. Not exceed 3 months. Number three, its flower is hermaphrodite. Let's remember from Prep.2 what's meant by hermaphrodite. Hermaphrodite, it means that both male and female reproductive system found or exists in the same flower. It's bisexual flower. Number four, can be easily artificially pollinated. If it's difficult to make self-pollination, as it's hermaphrodite, it's very easy to make it by artificial pollination. Number five, it produces large number of crops. We have many numbers of crops that we can do our experiment on it. So we can make experiment even part of them are lost. It has many contrasting traits. Contrasting trait doesn't mean opposite, never. Contrasting means alternative or multiple. How? When I say in pea plant or pea plant, I have red flower. Also, I have white flower. So the red is an opposite of white? Never. It's alternative, it's multiple, it's many different types of flowers or many different colors of flowers. Also we have side flower and terminal or end flower. They are contrasting traits. Pea plant has two types of flowers. One of them is red and the other is white. One of them is side as a position, one of them is end. The seeds of pea plant, one of them is yellow, the other is green. One of the seed is smooth and the other may be wrinkled. The stem may be tall, may be short. The pod, this is the pod of the pea plant, if it may be green or yellow. The bud may be swollen, may be zigzag or sinus, as it's not swollen, okay? Mendel observed during his experiment appearance of what? Appearance of dominant trait and recessive trait. What is the dominant trait? Dominant trait, they are the traits that appear if two similar factors of genes dominate over another, or one of them is dominant and the other is recessive. We will illustrate these two definitions in details in the third paper now. Okay, but first we must know that the dominant appear if two similar factors dominate over other, or one dominant and the other is what is recessive. It's not appear even if we have two dominant or one dominant and one recessive. This is the dominant. While the recessive appears only when aggregation of two similar factors. Like if we have two recessive, the recessive will appear. If we have two pure dominant, the dominant will appear. What will happen if we have one dominant and one recessive? The dominant will appear. We will illustrate in more details with an example in the third paper. Also, the dominant trait from these traits, one of them will be dominant and the other will be recessive, appear with ratio 100% in the first generation and with ratio 75% in the second one. While the recessive, they are the traits that disappear in the first and appear with ratio only 25 in the second. Okay? Again, in details. Dominant trait and recessive trait. We have two types of trait in any living organism. One dominate over the other. Dominate means appears more. Okay? By making an experiment on pea plant, Mendel know that or observe that all of these traits are dominant traits, and all of these traits are recessive traits. So when I said in pea plant I have red flower and I have white flower, the red flowers appears in all of the first generation while the white disappears. So now red is dominant and white is recessive. You understand? Okay. Mendel make a principle of complete dominance. What's meant by the principle of complete dominance? It is the appearance of dominant trait in the individuals of the first generation. When two individuals crossed, one of them carries a pure trait contrasting with other individual. This means that if I have one pure dominant with another individual of one pure recessive, what will happen? If I have red flower with white flower, what will happen? All of the first generation will be red. Why? Because the red is dominate, or the gene of red color dominate over the white color. Now, if for example, mating of pure red of pea plant with pure white of pea plant, 100% of the first will be what? Will be red. Why it's be red? Because the red is dominant trait. So the principles of complete dominant, or the principle of complete dominant, it means that if we have pure dominant gene or trait contrasting with another pure recessive trait, all of the first generation will be dominant. This is called principle of complete dominance. Mating between one pure dominant with one recessive, the result will be dominant. Okay? We have three concepts before we illustrate the Mendel first law: gametes, genotype, and phenotype. What's meant by gametes? From Prep.2, they are the reproductive cells. Okay, you took this as before. But now you must know that these reproductive cells carry the hereditary trait from the parent to their offspring. So gametes, they are the reproductive cells that carry the hereditary traits from the parent to their offspring. So when you take a trait from your father or from your mother, you took it through what? Through the gametes. Okay? Now we have two types in our life, which is genotype for the genes. genotype and phenotype. The genotype, it is the gene structure in the living organism, while the phenotype, it is the hereditary trait that appears on the living organism. For example, when I said, I have a brown eyes, this means that it's my phenotype is brown eyes. But my genotype may be not brown only. May I have brown and green, because I inherit my trait from both mother and father. We took our traits or inherit our traits from two sources, male and female, father and mother. So I took my traits from two factors, right? From two parts, male and female. Maybe I take one differ than the other. The trait that appear on my body is called phenotype. The trait which found inside my gene is called genotype. May be the same? Yes, may be the same. It's not a problem. Now, we travel to Mendel's first law. What's Mendel's first law? It's the law that Mendel studied the pea plant, and he called this law of segregation of factors. You must know this name, because in the exam may ask you about law of segregation of factor and didn't said Mendel's first law. Okay? What about Mendel's first law? When two pure individuals of any one pair of hereditary traits are different from each other, one is dominant, dominant appear in the first generation, while the two traits appear in the second generation with ratio 3:1. Let's know how to solve this law, and then we will again illustrate the definition. First, if I said I have red flower mixed or pollinated with white flower, the first question will be, this red flower is pure or impure? I said it's pure. And this must be pure. From where we know the pure or not pure? From this comparison. Remember, we said two similar dominant or one dominant and one recessive. If they are two dominant, it will be pure. If they are differ, it will be hybrid. Hybrid or impure. The recessive must be pure because it consists of two recessive traits. Okay? Okay. Now, how can we symbolize this gene? The red flower, we can symbolize this as R capital, R capital. From where we get these letters? We use the first letter. Okay? This is number one. Of what? Of dominant trait. So if I know that the red is dominant over white, so the red will be dominant. So I use its first letter. What about the recessive trait? This is dominant, right? Dominant. And this is recessive. From where I know? From the table in page 2. The recessive trait in pea plant is white. How can I simplify this trait? By write the small letter of the capital letter of the dominant one. يعني it means that it will be R small, R small. Why we write two letters? Because this trait is coming from two factors or two parents. One is male and the other is male, father and mother. Okay? Let's make cross, though they are the parent. Now, what are their gamete? Remember the gamete, the reproductive cell. This red color represented by two letters. One from male and the other from female. So in gametes we have how many gametes? 2, right? Crossed with how many gametes here? 2. Let's make crossing to take the first generation. First gamete with the first gamete. R capital, R small. First gamete with the second gamete, R capital, R small. Second gamete with the first gamete, R capital, R small. Second gamete with the second gamete, R capital, R small. As I said every year to my student, please don't make cross and finish our crossing and then write. No, cross and write, because you can confuse if you don't write after crossing. Here, what about this? It's dominant. What about this? It's dominant. What about this? It's dominant. And this also it's dominant. So 100% is dominant trait. 100% of the first generation, I mean. They are red flower. Are these traits pure? Never. They are not pure like their parent. Their parent is pure dominant and there are pure recessive. All of these are hybrid. Remember what's meant by hybrid? Impure, not pure. They take half dominant and half recessive, but the appearance is dominant. Why? Due to the principle of complete dominance. If pure dominant contrast or mix or pollinate with pure recessive, the result will be 100% dominant in the first generation. What about the second generation? Let it see. The second generation is coming from the first generation and it's only for plant, cannot make it on human. This is the parent 2. Okay, this is red hybrid flower or hybrid red flower. This is hybrid red flower. So here it's hybrid red. Sorry. The hybrid red flower with hybrid red flower. What now? The second step to make gametes. Okay, to make gametes, how? These are the gametes in this parent, and this parent are capital also or small. What will happen for the second generation? The second generation, as we said, cross. The first with the first are capital or capital. The first with the second are capital or small. The second with the first. How can we write it? Are small or capital? As I said before, the dominant, we use the capital letter of dominant trait and the small letter of also the dominant trait. If it's pure dominant, it will be R capital, R capital. What about the hybrid? Here, note. Pure dominant. How can we write it? Capital letter, capital letter. Okay? Hybrid in pure, dominant, capital letter, small letter of the same one, okay, of the same letter, I mean. Pure also, the recessive must be pure only. There is no hybrid recessive. Small letter, small letter. Let's make an example. Okay. Example. Red flower. The red flower is what? Is dominant. Okay. It may be pure, may be hybrid. If it's pure, R capital, R capital. If it's hybrid, R capital, R small. The white, which is the contrasting of red, white flower is recessive. Okay? This recessive also pure. This pure is R small, R small. You understand now? So here, dominant may be pure or hybrid. It's implied by two capital letters in case of pure. If it's hybrid, it's implied by one capital and one small. If it's pure recessive, it's implied by two small letters. We use the letter or the first letter of the dominant trait. let's complete. Here, R capital and R small from this rule. Can I write it R small, R capital? Never. We must start with R capital and R small. The second with the second, R small, R small. Here, what is this? Dominant. What is this? Dominant. I ask myself for each one. What is this? Dominant. And what is this? Recessive. So here, what is the ratio? 3 dominant to 1 recessive, or 75% to 25%. This, from the first generation and second generation, what we said here. When two pure individuals, okay, one pair of hereditary are different, they are different. Only the dominant trait appear in the first, and the two trait appears in the second generation with ratio 3:1. So please don't study the concept of the law before you do this experiment many times. Okay, and thank you and for your listening, and goodbye, and inshallah we will complete this lesson after a while بإذن الله. Thank you.